Hello. In this section, we'll talk about the E form of C major. The first thing we're going to do is just look at an E major chord in open position. This basic E major chord, fingered with the first finger free, and then moved all the way up to 8th position. Capo, virtual capo on the 8th fret. This looks like an E major chord, right? So it's the E form of C. Now, we're going to have a scale pattern that surrounds that, but real quick, what I did on the looper, I played this chord, which moving back down into E would look like this. In other words, I've taken the E major chord and I've lowered this tone, the E, to the 7th, and that creates an E major 7. And then I moved that all the way back up to the C position, and I took the bottom 4 notes of that. And that's the basis for our improvisation. Now, back to the basic E form of C. This bar chord is really the most common bar chord form for a major chord based on the 6th string. Its kind of brother is this one, right? The one based on the 5th string. Those two chords are really frequently used. So, although the chord is in 8th position, the scale itself is really surrounding 7th position. And we'll go ahead and play it slowly a couple of times. It starts on the 7th of the scale. It goes up to the 9th or the 2nd of the scale. So it goes from B to D. And we'll do the same thing we did with the previous scales. And let's hear these. So here we go. 1, 2, here we go. Let's try repeated notes, so da da da, ready, and now let the left hand catch up with the right hand, so we'll be playing 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3, and here we go. Let's challenge ourselves to go a little faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and a. In this improvisation, I'll explore things like the articulations we talked about before, and also string skipping, intervals, the upper and lower pedals, things like that. But I also want to kind of create a sense of the unexpected by leaving gaps and creating silence. I like to think of, creating silence. In other words, using silence as an active kind of resource for the improvisation. And so I'll leave some sort of more or less conspicuous gaps in the line. And the other thing I wanted to show you is that although when we learn the scale pattern, we'll, particularly this one really sticks within 7th position. It's very static, the hand sits. We don't want to think about these so much as fingerings, but as patterns on the neck in relation to the chord. And the difference is that if I play just as a fingering, I'm going to limit myself to the articulations that are sort of natural to this positional fingering. But if I think of the fingerings as negotiable and as the notes, the pattern on the neck as a set thing, then I have more freedom and I can create more variety of articulation. So, for example, I could do instead of, which is stiffer, right? So these notes up here are really in 9th position if I play it like that, which is is not the fingering for the scale pattern, but it's the same notes as the scale pattern. So that's something to think about. Free yourself up to use whatever fingering the music demands, but still see that as a scale pattern, geometric pattern associated with the basic C major chord based on the E form. Okay, so let's hear a little improvisation. And like I said, I'll leave some spaces as sort of a creative element in the improvisation. Okay, so there are a variety of techniques in there. Again, I would encourage you guys to look at chord forms. I played some things that were based on fourths, you know, from B to E is a fourth, E to A is a fourth, A to D is a fourth. And I also worked a little bit with some intervals that we'll be digging into deeper. Things like a sixth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But that's for a later chapter, really. Let's move on to the next section.